we have started the recording, and let me tell you what will we be discussing today in today's session. So we'll first see uh, what is software testing and what are different levels in software testing and what are current market expectations. What are you expected to do once you get in a software testing role? And then we'll see how a software application is developed, the entire life cycle, and also the entire testing life cycle. Where do you begin testing and where do you end testing? We'll look into it, and we'll see difference between manual and automation testing. We'll discuss about what exactly manual testing is and what exactly automation testing is. What has more demand in the market now, and then we'll see the roles and responsibilities of a manual testing engineer and then automation testing engineer. And finally, we'll discuss about what exactly is Selenium, what do you need to learn Selenium, and then I will wrap the section by discussing about what are these course details and what is the outcome of this course, what do you expect from this course, and at the end of the course, what will you be learning, and how will you be implementing that in your current project, or if you are a fresher, how do you use them in the interview to crack a job. So let's start with the first question. What is software testing? Software testing is a way we test an application. It can be a web application like Amazon.in. So we have this Amazon website, right, which is a web application. And software testing doesn't mean we test only web applications. We can also test mobile applications. Like for Amazon, we have a mobile app. We can test that, and also desktop applications. Like we have a calculator in our desktop. Uh, we have a Teams recorder or meeting scheduler in our desktop. We can test that too, because that is also a software. Software testing describes about uh, what is expected from a software, and we check everything is working fine or not. That's typically what software testing is. Now, who is a quality assurance engineer? Quality assurance engineer, or QAE, is the one who makes sure that software is working fine. He's the one who performs the software testing. He makes sure that there is an application which is under development, and there are customers who use that application. And quality assurance engineer is the one who will be the gatekeeper and make sure the application that is developed will follow all the requirements that the client or a customer needs, and he will make sure everything is working fine. That's the typical role of a quality assurance engineer. Now, before we move into further topics about quality assurance engineering, right? Let's first discuss about what is a basic web application architecture. So let's consider this application Amazon.in. Now we have opened this URL in a browser, and then it loads everything, right? Let's see how it loads. Right click anywhere in the application, click on inspect, and then go to source. And then if you look at this, right, Amazon.in, and there is an index file which contains a lot of HTML code. So, and then there are few other files which may contain. So if you look at this file, right, it says min.js, which means JavaScript. There is a lot of JavaScript code as well. Now, what your browser does is when you hit on this application URL, it fetches, the front end server will send this browser all this code, and your browser will load all this code. And then at the end, right, you see an application like this. So it contains HTML, JavaScript, and everything. Let me draw it and then show you. So we have this front end code. So which is JavaScript. One second. I think someone is waiting. And then JavaScript, HTML. Uh, Now this is your front end code where you have everything, and this is also called as a presentation layer. Now what happens is either your browser, the web browser that you are using in your machine, or your mobile application platform. So they uses this front end code and then loads an page that you can seamlessly use, and it is more uh, easily understandable by the customer. These are the two things. Now this is what we call front end design or front end code or presentation layer. And then we have, so whatever we do in the front end, right? What happens typically is everything is created as a data, and then it is stored in the database. One second. I think someone is waiting to log in. So we have our database here. Now there is this backend layer, or people call it server side code. Or they also call it application layer. Now this, what it does is it interacts with the DB. It stores data into DB, and it also gets data from the DB. That's what the backend layer do. Now, how is this front end layer and then backend layer interact? There is this another middle layer which we typically call as APIs, application programming interface. Now, what it does is it creates the connection between your front end and then your back end. So to and fro, it's everything is to and fro. So now let's see what happens once we load this Amazon.in. So it gets, when once we load the Amazon.in in your Chrome browser. So from presentation layer, you'll get all the front end code, JavaScript, HTML, and other things, or all images and all. And then your browser loads it. Where do we get from all the data and all? It gets from the API. Where do API gets its data? It gets from the backend layer. So backend layer interacts with the DB and it retrieves all the necessary data. When I say data, right, all these things. So they are saying that top rated premium quality. So there are these products, top rated premium quality products. Now, where do they store this data? They store this data in DB and then they mark it as top rated premium quality product. Now your backend layer, right? So it retrieves the data, it sends it to API, and from API it moves to front end, and your browser gets that front end data, and then it loads it in the web application. So this is what that typically happens. This is not the only architecture. We can call it the typical architecture. There are other architectures like MVP and all. So let's consider this typical architecture. Now, as a testing or quality assurance engineer, so do we actually need to learn or know about this? Uh, the answer is yes. Maybe not everything, but few things here. So you need to understand the flow basically, because the standard of an software testing engineer or quality assurance engineer has gone very high now. So people are expecting more from quality assurance engineers. So let's consider what we do at different layers. Uh, in the front end, right? Whenever your applications open in the browser, we can test that using the UI automation. We call that browser as an UI layer. We can test that application using UI automation or UI testing. Let's call it testing. Let's not call it automation or manual for now. And similarly in the mobile case as well, we can call it UI testing. So in UI testing, what we do is we open application and then we see everything is loaded correctly. We see Amazon.in is there at the end, and clicking on it loads the page again. We see all these icons are present. We see this banner and also all the list of products and all. So we typically test all these things in the all these things in the UI application, and also make sure that browser is loading everything fine. Now, instead of doing that, we can also write unit test cases. in the front end code. So what is this unit test cases or unit testing? So let's, I've shown you that we have a lot of code in the front end right here. So all this is JavaScript code. So min.js. We can perform testing on the each and every method or a function written in this JavaScript file and make sure if we pass input as A and B, we are expecting an output as C and D, and we'll make sure that the output is correct. We will do it in a very small unit or a method. That's why we call it as unit testing. We can see more about this unit testing concept in one of our session. There is a dedicated session for unit testing. We can check it there. Now after this, we can have uh, testing in this layer as well. So we call it API testing. We can do it using REST. If the API is a REST service API, we can use tools like REST Assured, HTTP client, Axios, and all for testing this API layer. And in the backend, there is again code that is written by your developers, and where we will again do unit testing. And on the database, we can directly write queries and then verify our query is returning the exact output or not. So this is where we do DB testing. Or there is, if you are using Oracle DB, right? We have this concept called unit testing PL-SQL. PL-SQL is an SQL programming language where you can write functions in the SQL as well, SQL programming. You can test that functions using unit testing. So we can do those type of testings here. Uh, Let me show this slide. So the basic web architecture, we have our desktop application. We have, one second, web application, mobile application, and then we have a presentation layer or front end code. So these, you know, devices will use this front end code to load our application. And then we have API layer where our front end layer interacts with the API layer, and the API interacts with the backend or server side code, which interacts with the AV, and then it retrieves data. And here we are discussing different levels of testing. So at the first level, we can have DB testing or unit testing for the BL SQLs that are written, and unit testing on server side, REST API testing, unit testing on client side or front end. And then for testing your UI applications, right? For desktop applications, we can use SQLi, AutoIT, QTP, Tosca. There are many tools. For web applications, we have Selenium, Cypress, and other tools as well. For mobile, we have APM and some other tools as well. Now, the important question is, as a quality assurance engineer, do you need to learn all these tools? Not exactly. I mean, learning everything will always be a good idea. But if you are starting your career into automation testing, right, you have to begin at UI automation testing. Uh, that too with the web application automation testing, because there are a lot of applications, a lot of requirements for an web application and UI automation engineer. Because typically unit testing, right? Unit testing will be done by your developers as well. They will write unit test cases. They will test their code that they have written, and then they will execute it. But your developers won't be able to understand UI automation. So that's where quality assurance engineer comes in. So a quality assurance engineer will test the end product that is used by the customers, which is the UI application. And he will also, if your application is compatible with mobile, you can also test, open that application in a mobile and then test it. Similarly, if you can install your application on a desktop, you can install it and then you can perform your testing. Now, what is the market expectation? So what are companies, top product based companies or MNCs or startups expecting from a quality assurance engineer? Now they are expecting you to mainly do manual testing and automation testing on a web application on the front end layer, this part. Either it could be desktop, web application or mobile application, you should be able to perform manual testing. Along with manual testing, you should be able to automate the test cases that are written. You should be able to make sure everything or most of the things are automated. So this is the typical expectation of any company. Now, if you uh, typically this will help you to, if you understand this, it will help you to get a job at top MNCs, CTS, Infosys, and all. So this part should be enough. Learn Selenium, and then so there is a programming language that is required uh, for automating things in Selenium. You can do it in Java, JavaScript, Python, because Selenium supports multiple languages. But Java is the current trend, followed by JavaScript and Python. And then not just automation, you should be able to manually write out your test cases. You should be able to understand the business requirements. We'll see what is a requirement, what are functional, non-functional requirements in the next slide. You should be able to understand all this and then test this product. Now, if you go to a startup site, what they expect is, along with this, having this testing this is an additional advantage. API testing, either REST or SOAP API testing. They expect you to automate, take care of web application and then API testing. And if you work with some top companies like Oracle, Microsoft, and all, so there they expect you to maybe not write or automate unit testing, but once the unit testing is done, unit testing automation is done, they expect you to run these unit test cases and analyze if there are any failures in the unit testing, and also a little bit of DB testing. Write some queries and then see the expected output is there or not. So this is the market expectation. Now, just like if a developer, he can manage both front end, back end, and API, right? He is called full stack developer. Just like that, we have a term for candidates who can manage all this. We call them as software development engineer in test, because he will be at the entire development process, but he'll be testing each and every layer. So it is typically called as SDET. You should have heard this in if you have already been into interviews, if you have given some interviews and all, right, you should have already heard about this term. This term is called SDET, which means software development engineer in test. So you are expected to handle most of the things. Uh, Now let's see what is test pyramid. So what it says is, if you have to write more test cases in unit testing layer, and then less test cases, little less test case in integration, and then even less test case in UI. Let me explain that to you. So a test pyramid says that majority of your testing should go in the unit testing, either at the server side or at the front end. Because let's say you have written unit test cases here and you're running it. Now, while deploying your application, right, you don't need all these things. You don't need a browser, you don't need your front end server, you don't need an API server. You just need the backend server and a DP. So the cost of maintaining unit test cases is less. And unit test cases run way faster than the UI test cases. If one UI test case take 5 minutes, right? Let's consider that. Most of your unit test, I think at least 100 unit test case will be run in that 5 minutes. So they run very fast. That's why people expect more testing to be done in the unit testing layer, and then integration testing, which is API, or integrating two different products in the server side only. When I say two different products, right, let's consider this Amazon application again. Here we have Amazon Fashion. We can say that is one product. Amazon Fresh, we can say that as another product. We have to make sure if you search something right here, so you will get results from both Amazon Fashion and Amazon Fresh. That's where that's how we do integration testing. We have to make sure that if you are working in this Amazon Fresh product, if you are currently employed in Amazon and they ask you to test Amazon Fresh, you are working for this Amazon Fresh team, you should not only be testing Amazon Fresh, you should also be testing Amazon Fresh is properly integrating with other products as well. So that's what integration testing or service testing means. Now, the test pyramid says you need to have little less test cases here. And then on the UI layer, right? So where we use Selenium and all, so they expect test to be even less because if you look at this arrow, right? So it needs more integration, meaning you need more servers and maintenance will be more, and then it is slower here. So as I said, if an UI test case take 5 minutes, you can run at least 100 unit test cases in that during that 5 minutes. So that's how teams prefer you to write your automation testing. I'll pause here. If you have any questions, you can ping in chat. I'll answer them. I hope there are no questions. And okay, let me start the session again. Let's go to the next topic where we discuss about requirement. What this is a common term that is used every day. Requirement. What is a requirement? A requirement is a function or a feature that you want your customer to use. Let's consider this Amazon application only. Recently, WhatsApp has launched WhatsApp payments. Let's say if Amazon doesn't have WhatsApp payment, it integrated to it in the payment session. So Amazon team will come up with a requirement says integrate WhatsApp payments to Amazon. So that is a requirement. So now requirement has two things. So two different things. First one is a functional requirement. Second one is a non-functional requirement. Functional requirement typically make sure whatever your customers are using, right? It is working fine properly. So they are able to do it, all right. Let's say if you have, we consider the same example of WhatsApp payments. Let's say Amazon has added the WhatsApp payment in the payment section. So their customers should be able to, add things to their cart and then pay for that items that they have added in cart using Amazon, using WhatsApp payment. This is the functional requirement. Now, what non-functional requirement is, uh, we have to make sure that the payment process will be done in less than 5 seconds when everything is good. Let's say if your internet bandwidth is good, you have to make sure that doing this payment from payment session to order placed page. So everything should be done in 5 seconds in a happy path. What is happy path is in a good scenario where you have your proper internet connection, you have balance in your WhatsApp payments, you got your OTP in time and all. So this has to be done in 5 seconds. This is called non-functional requirement where we test that user doesn't have to wait for so much time to complete his payment process. So non-functional requirements typically make sure that your customers are able to use your application very seamlessly. They don't have to wait, they don't have to they won't be stuck at one place. So all these things will be made sure in non-functional requirements. So these are the key difference between non-functional and functional requirements. Now, in most of your testing, right, if you are a quality assurance engineer, so there'll be two different roles. One one person will do functional testing. The other person will do non-functional testing. Functional testing, will be done in all these places. So everything you do functional testing using Selenium, unit testing, that's again functional testing, REST API testing, again functional testing. All these are functional testing only. Now, what do non-functional testers do? So they do security testing so that your application is more secure and no hackers can, hack your application once a user is logged in. They do performance testing. So they make sure that if you open Amazon.com, the entire page is loaded in 2 or 3 seconds if you have proper internet connection. So they do install. Let's say you are working on a desktop application product like Teams. So they'll make sure that you are able to do installation in less than 5 minutes, or there is no hard breaks during installation. There is no complicated process during installation, which is called installation testing. Uh, your application supports multiple languages, like Google supports multiple languages, right? It supports Telugu, Hindi, English, all other languages. So that is called localization testing, where you verify your application is working in different languages. It is showing all the text and all in different languages. Now all these things comes under non-functional testing. Here will be, the training that we are giving. So we will only be discussing about functional testing. Non-functional testing is a different QAE role. And then let's discuss about software development lifecycle and software testing lifecycle. These are again the common terms. SDLC, where we discuss on software development lifecycle. STLC, software testing lifecycle. So first, what we do is we start here in software development lifecycle. We gather all the requirements like this for both functional and non-functional. Like we consider this up requirement called adding WhatsApp payments to Amazon, right? We gather all such requirements. Your dev team will analyze it. Your product owner will analyze it, and then your dev team will start designing. Uh, they will come up with an approach on how to add this and all, and then they'll start coding. Once everything is coded, right, they will move all this code into a version control like Git, SVN, etc. And from there, as a testing team comes, so they will pull all this code, deploy it to an application, and then open that application. They do testing. It can be both manual testing or automation testing. And once testing is done, they will move this to your end customers. So all the Amazon users can now use WhatsApp payment while buying something. Now, what is software testing lifecycle? So here we'll start with requirement analysis. Once the requirements are gathered, right? You as an quality assurance engineer, you'll analyze these requirements and you'll do a test planning. Test planning is where you will understand uh, what are the things that we have to test, who will be testing it, what are the requirements, and what is the environment that we have, all other things, how many resources that we have, what is the duration that we have for this testing. Everything will be discussed here. We'll discuss about test plan in detail in our coming sessions. And then we'll start test designing. Designing is a place where we write test cases. So for a given requirement, right, we'll write test cases like, once we navigate to payment page, also under UPI session or in a different session, we should be seeing WhatsApp payment. That will be a first test case. After clicking on WhatsApp payment, you should be, asked for adding your phone number, and then you will receive an OTP. All these are, test cases. We'll write all these test cases in test design. Environment setup. Once your developers completed their coding, right, they will, push their code to some version control like Git and all. So from there, you will pull the code, set up an environment. Either you will be doing it. They will just be a series of commands which your development team or your ops team, DevOps team will give you. You will just run one after the other, and then you'll create your own environment for testing. And then you'll start executing your manual test cases, your test cases manually or through automation. And if there are any issues, right, you'll log bugs that, okay, this is the requirement and our application is not working in that way. So instead of WhatsApp payments displaying in UPI section, it is displaying in credit card section. So that is a bug. So you log all such things as bugs, and then you'll assign them to your developers. Once developer fixes, you will again retest the application, and then you will submit a test closure report. So this is where you have all the details like what is how many tests are executed, what are the bugs that are still pending. So did developers fix all the bugs, or they are still working on fixing few bugs? You'll submit everything in this test closure report, and then you'll submit to your product owner or higher level people. This is typically done in a software testing lifecycle. We will have an anyhow detailed discussion on software testing lifecycle in during manual testing classes. Now let's discuss about what is automation testing and what is manual testing. So manual testing is a way where you manually open your application in a browser. If it is a desktop application, you open it in an Windows or Mac machine. If it's a mobile application, you'll open it in an Android or iOS phone, and then you will start checking each and everything manually. So you'll first say, okay, Amazon.in is present, and then you'll go. There is a section which where only 4 things are present, and they are present in the proper order. So you verify all these things manually. Now, automation testing is something where which all the steps that you've done manually, starting from opening a browser, adding this URL, verifying Amazon button, verifying these 4 sessions, verifying the text here, everything. You can also verify the color in this image. So there is this yellow, right? You can also verify things like that. So all these things will be taken care of by automation script, which opens the browser, opens the application. It checks each and everything that you have scripted. And then if there is anything that is present which is not expected, it will fail the test case and then show you that, okay, at this point we are expecting A, but we have seen B. So that's why this test failed. After that, you can verify that change. You can log bugs and then assign it to your developers. This is typically difference between automation and manual testing. So there are a lot of advantages over for automation testing over manual testing. Manual testing, everything is done manually, and it's very time consuming. Let's say you have 100 test cases, maybe you need 2 or 3 days to execute them, to check everything and all. And so you can, in automation testing, right? You have to rely only here. You can only check, do manual testing either at the web application place or now using Postman, right? You can do manual testing in the API layer as well. These are the 2 places, the UI layer and then the API. You can't do manual testing in other places. That's the other disadvantage. And we can't have many 1,000 test cases or 2,000 test cases to verify everything manually because it's very time consuming. And if a bug occurred and if your developer fixed that bug, you have to go and then re-execute or retest everything from scratch using manual testing. That's the other problem. But for automation testing, right, everything is done using tools and script. So if you have 1,000 test cases, you will trigger them today. You'll overnight. You'll go home and by the next day you come in, right? All this execution will be done. You'll just go and see the failed test cases, analyze them why they are failing, and then if there are any bugs, you'll log the bugs to your developers and then ask them to fix. Once they fix, right, in retesting phase, you don't go and manually test all the things. So you'll again execute your automation test cases. You go home. By the time you come back, everything is done. You'll analyze the results and make sure everything is working fine or not. So that is a key difference. Now, what are the typical roles of an manual QA? So the first important thing is both for manual QA or automation QA, you have to understand the current application behavior. Let's say we have this Amazon.com. You have joined for this product, Amazon Fresh. It's not just about Amazon Fresh. You have to know about the entire application, what it does, because in order to do integration testing between Amazon Fresh and Amazon Fashion, right, you need to understand what your application does. So understanding your current application is an must thing. And then you have to understand what are the new features. New features means requirements that will be added to the application. So we have discussed about WhatsApp payments, right? You need to understand how the integration is happening. What are the different ways that customer uses this new integration or new requirement. You have to understand both. Once you understand this, right, for the new features like WhatsApp payments, you need to write your own test cases. You need to write, okay, this is test one, where we go and see WhatsApp payments is displayed in a payment section. Second test case, we need to check WhatsApp payment. Using WhatsApp payment, we are able to complete an online transaction. Third test case, if wrong OTP is entered, we have been giving proper error messages and payment is getting declined. So we write all such things as test cases. And then after writing test cases or authoring test cases, right, we execute these test cases manually. First thing we do, check everything that is developed newly is working fine. And then due to this new development, not all the existing features are also working. That's what we check. So adding WhatsApp payment should not, you know, regress the other UPI payments like Paytm and Google Pay, right? So WhatsApp payment should also work. Paytm and Google Pay should also work in the same way. That's what we test. We check the new feature and also we verify the existing features are working fine. And if there are any bugs, right, we raise the bugs for new features and also the existing features. If something is not working in the existing feature, right, we will raise a bug for it. If something is not working in the new feature that is developed, we will again raise a bug for it. Retesting. What is retesting is once your developer fixes a bug that you're logged, we need to retest it. Make sure that that is working fine. And also here, we will again make sure that because of the bug that he fixed, he didn't regress or he didn't make other failures in the application. So all the other existing features are also working fine. These are the typical roles and responsibilities of manual QA. Now what automation QA does is he also first you need to understand the application behavior and also new features that are coming into the application. Now once the new features are added, right, he execute the automation tests. All the existing automation tests he will execute and he will make sure nothing is regressed. So everything is working fine after the adding the new feature as well. Now, if there is any failures, right, he will analyze them and then he will raise bugs. Now, once this existing feature testing is done, uh, if there are any, let's say you modified something in a page A, because of it, there are some testware failures. Let me give you an example. Let's say Amazon.com. This is an image sort of thing. If your developers has modified it to a link, let's imagine. Now, the test that verifies this Amazon dot in image will fail because this is modified to a link now. So that you have to update in your testware changes. So that is called stabilizing your testware. It says that whatever new changes that are done by your developers, if they are impacting your automation test cases, and if these new changes are valid, then you have to modify your test cases based on the new test case. That's called stabilizing your test cases. Once all these things are done, we will and bugs are fixed, we will do retesting, and then we will start with automating new features. So whatever feature that is given here, right, we will start automating those features, all the tests that are there in this new feature. Till this automation is done, right, it's your responsibility to manually test the new feature test until the automation is complete. So automating some tests will take time. Let's say you have 10 test cases written for WhatsApp payments. So until you automate all these 10 test cases, right, it's your responsibility to manually test these 10 test cases and then make sure nothing is regressed. That will also be your responsibility. So that's where quality assurance engineer comes into picture now. So where he does both manual testing and also the automation testing. Manual testing is done for the new features until the automation is complete. You execute the existing automation test case to make sure that the existing features are working fine because of the new changes that we have added. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can ping in chat. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. So now let's discuss what is Selenium. Selenium is an open source automation framework. So you need to understand what open source is. Open source means you don't have to pay anything to Selenium guys for using their framework. It is free and you can install it in all devices, Mac, Windows, Linux, everywhere. And you can automate your web applications. So Selenium is not used to automate web, desktop applications. You can only automate your web applications using Selenium. It's not just your test cases, called automation test case or manual test case that you automate. So if you have an task where you fill your timesheet, you can automate. I mean, you have to do it every day in some companies. You have to do it in once in a week. So you can automate this process using Selenium. Okay, at 8 p.m. So run this particular script, which actually opens my timesheet in the application and then adds 1 day and saves it, submits the timesheet. So you can automate the entire process using Selenium. So that's what they say. It's not just about testing your application. It's also automating the boring day-to-day administration tasks. That's where Selenium is used. It supports multiple languages: Java, JavaScript, Python, C Sharp, and Ruby. Now, most of the products, right, they are already using Java. I mean, there is good usage of C Sharp and Python as well. But recently, Cypress has entered the market, which uses JavaScript. So after Cypress entering the market, right, Selenium with JavaScript, is also being widely used now because of few disadvantages. Cypress have people are integrating Selenium with JavaScript and Selenium with Cypress, and then they are automating everything. But still, Selenium with Java is leading one in the market now. So there are many companies which are used, and there are millions of test cases that are automated using Selenium Java. So that's where we will be focusing on in this training. So what is Selenium? It's not just an one single tool or one single software. It's a combination of all these things. So Selenium ID, integrated development environment. So which helps you to record and playback. Let's say you are doing you have opened your application, you're doing something here. Now what you can add Selenium ID to your browser, which we'll discuss later, and then you can say record. So whatever you do in the application, right, it will record everything, and you can stop recording. And once it is stopped, right, it will create a test case for you in the ID. You can just click on the run test case. It will execute everything, whatever you have done while recording, right? It will do everything that you have done. So that's the advantage of Selenium ID. But most of the companies don't use it. You can use it for your automating your own regular task and all. You can use it, but for the real-time automation, right? For testing your web applications, we mostly don't use it. And then we have Selenium WebDriver. This is what we use for automating our test cases. So this is where this requires some scripting knowledge. But Selenium ID, it doesn't require any scripting knowledge. So there are little for loops here and there, but we can still manage it without any scripting knowledge. But Selenium WebDriver, this needs scripting knowledge. I mean, the basic part of fundamentals and basics of either Java, JavaScript, Python, whatever language you are using. And then we have Selenium Grid. Grid is used for executing your test cases. So it is not something which is used for uh, coding. It is only used for executing your test cases. We'll discuss Selenium WebDriver and Selenium Grid in detail. We'll just I'll just show you how Selenium IDE works. And then the next is along with Selenium, right? You need to have knowledge on these additional tools as well. And we'll be discussing all these tools. We need Git. It is the place where you store all your code that is written. So you write some code today and then you store it in a place, right? That place is Git. And tomorrow you'll pull the code again, and then you start your work again from tomorrow. And whatever you push, right, it's not just available for you, it is available for your colleagues as well, for your peers. So even they can see your code that you've written. So that's what Git is. Maven is a build tool and also a dependency manager. So it helps you from unit testing, UI testing, integration testing, everything can be done uh, using Maven. It helps you to build your application, create Java files and all. And it also, I mean, at least in testing perspective, right, we use it mostly for managing our dependencies, that all the jars that we have. We will discuss about Maven and get in detail again. TestNG is a automation test running framework. So TestNG is a framework which we'll be discussing in detail. And along with TestNG, we will also be discussing JUnit for unit testing. There is one dedicated class where we discuss about unit testing. So that's where we use JUnit, because most of the organizations use JUnit for unit testing. So we'll have a discussion on it. And then Jenkins is your scheduler. So when should your scripts run? Where should your scripts run? Everything will be done using Jenkins scheduler. So you'll schedule a job, you'll go home. So in night, Jenkins will execute that job, open your machines, deploy the latest dev code in a test environment. It will run all your test cases, and then by morning you reach, it will share you an email which says these are the tests run, this is the latest code, and these are the failures. It will do everything. We'll discuss about Jenkins as well. And extends report is a library which helps in reporting. we'll discuss about that. Now, what are the course details? So we start with manual testing and then automation testing. So we use Selenium WebDriver with Java library and then Java programming language. So TestNG framework for executing your test cases. CI/CD tools we use Git, Maven, and Jenkins. And the duration of this course is 45 days and Monday to Friday, 1 hour. It should typically be 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So all the meeting recordings and the materials will be shared to you. Let's say I have shown you this PPT, right? Along with the recording, you'll get this PPT as well. And once we start discussing about topics, right, there is a dedicated notes that we have already written. So we will share that recording, that notes as well. And all the coding that we do in the class, we will push it to Git. So Git, we can also use, register in Git and then start using it. It is completely free. We'll push all the code there, and at the end of the class, right, after the class, you can see that code in the Git URL. I'll make sure everything is available there for your reference. And then finally, the course outcome. So what will you be doing at the end of the course? You can manually test all the web applications, and you can automate web application using Selenium WebDriver Java, and you can also execute a test both manually and also through automation. Analyze the failures in the automation, raise bugs, build your own automation testing framework. This is very important. This is where we uh, target things from day 15 onwards. We'll be looking at how do we create our automation framework for almost 20 days. Every day in the class, we'll segregate things and then make sure we are building an automation framework. And we understand CI/CD process, what is continuous integration and continuous delivery. And then at the end, you should be able to create your own Jenkins project and schedule your tests and run your tests. So that's pretty much it in the today's demo. So I'm open for any questions. If you have any questions, you can ping me.